You think miracles only lifted the faithful? Think again. In 1212, thousands of European youths and wandering poor marched, chanting that the sea would split for them. Moses. Some followed a shepherd named Stephen of Cloyes to Saint-Denis. Others rallied to Nicholas of Cologne and crossed the Alps. Chroniclers called them pueri, children or the powerless. Port rumors speak of shipwrecks near Sardinia and sails in North Africa. Priests praised their zeal, kings told them go home. This isn't a fairy tale. It's a pilgrimage that curdled into hunger, betrayal, and bones and mud. Let's plunge into the twisted truth. You want a miracle? Try thirst first. The Children's Crusade begins with a promise so audacious it still stings. If they walked for Christ, the sea itself would open. Think of it. No ships, no money, no armor. Just bare feet, calloused hope, and a chorus of psalms bouncing off village walls. The texts call them pueri. That word seduces modern ears into picturing toddlers, but in medieval Latin it could also mean the powerless, landless teenagers, hired hands, servant boys, even poor girls moving with the crowds. One thread runs through every early report. 1212, two movements, one in northern France, one in the Rhineland, and everywhere, signs. A shepherd with visions, crosses chalked on doors, rumors that the Mediterranean would behave like the Red Sea. You can roll your eyes now. In famine-scraped Europe, that promise tasted like water. Besides, miracles were currency. Reliquaries healed. Saints bled. This wasn't cosplay piety. It was survival wrapped in ecstasy. Yet here's the twist the legends hide. The most sober, near-contemporary sources do not show armies of toddlers. They show swelling columns of the poor. Young, yes, but not infants, moving because authority would not. Today we'd call this a mass migration lit by apocalyptic marketing. Back then it looked like holiness on the march, and the march had names. Meet Stephen of Cloyes, the shepherd kid who claimed Jesus handed him letters. Picture June heat at the Lendit Fair outside Saint-Denis. Traders barking prices, pilgrims haggling for relics, and a boy preaching that the Lord, disguised as a poor pilgrim, had eaten his bread and ordered him to deliver those letters to King Philip II. Stephen pulls a crowd like a medieval influencer, with perfect algorithm timing. Chroniclers from Leon say thousands, some wrote 15 to 30,000, swarmed him. Not toy soldiers, hungry, restless youths and wandering poor. They marched to the king's door, carried by hymns and rumor. Philip did not swoon. He asked the Paris masters, church intellectual heavyweights, what to do. Their answer: send them home. No miracle, no campaign. Just a royal shrug cloaked as prudence. Stephen kept preaching anyway, his voice a flint striking dry straw. Imagine TikTok zeal without a pause button. The soundtrack is psalms, the comments are tears. People wanted purpose they could touch. They followed a boy who promised God would part seas for those who had no ships. If you think that sounds delusional, check your era's hashtags. We are not immune to movements built on charisma and certainty. Stephen's crusade took a southward road, bellies already gnawing, eyes on Marseille's glittering water. You thought the miracle would be thunder and light. It was dust and blisters. South from Vendôme toward Marseille, the Stephen crowd begged its way through villages already lean. Bread is not romantic when you fight a dog for the crust. The air smelled of sweat, mule dung, river rot. Some peeled away and limped home. Others clung to the rumor that the water itself would make a road. Imagine 1,000 teenagers today walking to a coastline because a viral prophet says the ocean will unlock if you just believe hard enough. You would call it a cult. In 1212, they called it faith. At Marseille, the shoreline becomes a stage, gulls screaming like prophets, masts creaking, salt burning cracked lips. And then the offers start. Merchants with earnest faces, passage promised. History remembers names like Hugh the Iron and William the Pig, whispered like curses or punchlines. Did Stephen's followers actually board those ships? Early sources are thin. Later tales swell with betrayal, shipwrecks, and auctions. What we can say, where desperate crowds gather, predators bloom. Today it is human traffickers with WhatsApp. Then it was men with contracts and charm. The sea does not split. It keeps its secrets. And while France gossips about Stephen, a second storm builds along the Rhine. Enter Nicholas of Cologne, the boy preacher who did not wait for kings. In the spring and summer of 1212, he drew thousands to Cologne, men, women, and yes, many young people, carrying T-shaped Tau crosses like a brand. He promised not bloodshed, but conversion, a barefoot sermon on the power of purity. They split into routes over Switzerland, climbing stone staircases the mountains call roads. No nightly supply train, no winter cloaks. Listen to the Alps, wind like knives, hail that stings like hornets, and the constant music of loose rock underfoot. Bodies quit. Feet split. 2 out of 3, some later writers say, turned back or died. Imagine your group chat dying one by one, dots going gray. The survivors reach Italy in late August. Genoa shines like a promise. Arches, bell towers, and a harbor forested with masts. Here the performance is simple. Nicholas leads them to the water. They kneel, they pray. They wait for the sea to split like a curtain. Nothing. No velvet path through the blue, just tide slap and the laughter of gulls. Is that cruelty or mercy? In modern terms, this is the moment the app crashes during the revolution. Still, Genoa offers something unexpected, and it is not a miracle. Genoa does not mock, it negotiates. City officials, impressed or simply practical, offer citizenship to those who will stop waiting for a parted sea and start working. Think about that. A port city absorbing a crowd of penniless zealots and turning them into neighbors. Some stay. They trade psalms for wages, Tau crosses for tools. Others cannot surrender the script. They haunt the harbor, eyes fixed on a horizon that refuses to split. Sailors sell news by the cupful, storms in the Tyrrhenian, pirates near Sardinia, Python captains willing to ferry a few toward Palestine. Maybe. The smell of tar and citrus peels fills the arcades. Nicholas himself refuses to declare defeat. He moves south toward Pisa, then Rome, a shrinking constellation of loyalists trailing. If you are picturing a tidy finale, delete it. Movements rarely end with a full stop. They fray. Friendships dissolve over bread and blame. In our century, you would see threads of angry posts, conspiracy riffs about a pope blocking miracles. In theirs, you saw exhausted faces, bare legs streaked with cuts, and a leader aging into doubt. Rome means answers, or at least the performance of answers under painted ceilings. Pisa smells like rope and oranges and last chances. Here, in the bustle of quays and counting houses, a few ships agree to take some of the German youths on board. Do they reach the Holy Land? Some accounts hint yes, most go silent. Silence in history is not proof, but it is a graveyard. The rest follow Nicholas toward Rome, legs rubbery, stomachs gnawing the body from within. Predators love pilgrims. They breed in crowds. Cutpurses work the shrine lines. Pimps hunt the stragglers. Warehouse bosses rent floor space by the cough. Picture modern border towns swollen with people who believed in algorithm's promise. The hustle is eternal. Only the apps change. By the time Nicholas stands in Rome, the miracle has become a question. What do you do when God says, wait? The papal court knows theater, processions, choirs, incense like fog. The young stare up at vaults painted in blues that look like sky. Some weep. Some sleep standing. All listen for a command that will make the roads make sense. Instead, they hear praise and dismissal, a benediction with a bruise. Pope Innocent admires their zeal, or so the story goes, and tells them to return home, to grow up, to serve God later. Imagine the taste of that message after crossing mountains, holy sugar on a sentence that means go away. Some accept, some refuse. Most simply collapse into the city and disappear. Praise can wound deeper than insult. The line most people remember, "These children put us to shame," floats through later tellings like incense. But whatever Innocent actually said, the effect was the same. No crusade, no ships, no parted sea. Go home. Be good. Wait. Home is not a place. It is a distance. The roads that baptized them in hope now scour them with heat and hunger. Friends peel off to monasteries for bread. Others sign contracts they cannot read. The rest start the long crawl north. Every blister is a sermon. Every theft feels like a betrayal of the promise. This is where miracles rot into mold. Picture a stadium concert that promised salvation and ended with the exits locked and the lights cut. The crowd tramples itself to the parking lot. On the road over the Alps, winter makes good on threats. Nicholas himself will not survive a second crossing. Back in Germany, his father, caught between grief, blame, and politics, is arrested and hanged. Someone must pay. Someone always pays. Even in failure, the movement does not die. It metastasizes into stories, and stories will do what hunger did not. They will make the tragedy famous, and they will travel faster than feet. You want justice. You get vengeance. In the Rhineland, parents count the missing in whispers, then in rage. Priests scold from pulpits about rash vows. City councils debate what to do with the strays who stayed in Italy. Some letters fly. Most people just bury the names. Nicholas becomes a cautionary tale told in kitchens, part saint, part fool. The rumor mill chews the story and spits out culprits. Heretics who bewitched the youth, Jews who tempted them with coin, nobles who feared losing face if a miracle happened without them. You have seen this movie. When the world bends strangely, someone must be blamed. Nicholas's father swings to quiet a crowd. It does not work. The grief does not drain. It curdles into shame. Meanwhile, along the old route, bones and sandals glut the ditches. Wolves learn new paths. Here is the hard truth. Even if no slave market ever auctioned a single pilgrim from 12 to 12, exploitation chewed them all the way there and back. By innkeepers who overcharged, by employers who lied, by men with knives and promises. Today we file charges. Then they filed the story under God's will. And just when the German memory starts to scab, France supplies the most poisonous legend of all. Two names like a joke that isn't funny. Hugh the Iron and William the Pig. In the classic French tale, these Marseille merchants offer ships for free, for the glory of God. 7 vessels take on the faithful. 2 shatter on rocks off the island of San Pietro near Sardinia. The others make North Africa, where buyers wait wet-lipped. Some boys hold to their prayers and are killed. Others vanish into markets and households. A pope hears of it and orders a church for the Novelli Innocenti, the new innocents, where drowned bodies washed ashore uncorrupted. It is perfect melodrama and terrible to resist, but perfect stories prove too perfect under light. The earliest accounts do not sustain the full script. Later writers embroidered miracles onto scars. That does not mean no one drowned. It means we cannot know who, how many, or whether those names were ever real men or useful villains. Still, stand on a Sardinian cliff at dusk and listen to the water grind stone, and tell me the legend does not taste true. Desperate people plus kind offers equals disaster. That math pays out in every century, and in every century, someone gets rich. That is the ugliest constant. Here is where the myths blink under scholarship's white light. Strip away later romance and you get 2 crowds in 1212, not 1, and few infants. Sources close to the time, like an anonymous monk from Leon and the Royal Chronicle of Cologne, describe a surge of pueri who begged, sang, and walked, and then were ordered home. They mention Stephen's letters, Philip's refusal, Nicholas's march, the Alps, Genoa, Pisa, and Rome. What they do not confidently give is mass slave markets, miracle churches, or parted seas. In 1977, historian Peter Rates picked through every scrap and sorted the reliable from the Baroque. Gary Dixon later traced how poetry, sermons, and chroniclers' imaginations kneaded tragedy into legend. This is not a takedown, it is a rescue. Real grief does not need special effects. Modern readers want rosters, port ledgers, passenger lists. Medieval record-keeping does not always oblige. Yet one Genoese note suggests some newcomers were offered citizenship, which is both incredibly practical and painfully unromantic. The point is not to demystify. It is to see the people under the story, the sore-footed poor who wanted a straight road to meaning. Once you see them, the legend stops being cute and starts being the oldest news. Power looked away, and the vulnerable paid the toll. If exploitation had a patron saint, it would collect tithes at the city gate. Follow the 1212 routes as they really were, and you meet predators with bills of sale, not mustaches to twirl. Port bosses who demand fees, to sleep in warehouses. Carters who triple prices between river crossings. Guilds that fine newcomers for working without papers, then sell the papers. Priests who promise relic cures for coin. Does the historical record list names of every swindle? No. You know why? Because most swindles were perfectly legal. In our century, a teenager can be trafficked with a bus ticket and a false job ad. In theirs, all it took was an oath and a hand pressed on a Bible. Add hunger to hope, and you get math even saints cannot break. Imagine the cough in a crowded nave, the smell of unwashed wool, the scabbed lips, the 1,000-yard stares in torchlight. People break in small ways long before shipwrecks. So if you ask, were they enslaved? I answer. Many were enslaved long before chains, by debt, by contracts, by hunger, by lies. And still they sang, because singing is cheaper than bread and louder than despair. The next time you hear the legend, picture the ledger. Bones float best in memory. On Sardinia, locals point to a church once called the Novelli Innocenti, the New Innocents, raised, they say, in honor of drowned crusaders whose bodies washed ashore incorrupt. Pilgrims supposedly came to stare and weep and leave coins. Archaeologists and archivists hunt for proof. The trail is as patchy as sea fog. Maybe a chapel stood. Maybe the story colonized an older shrine. Either way, Europe learned how to make grief architectural. Relics drew roads. A bone becomes a destination becomes commerce. Commerce feeds the next sermon about holy risk. Sound familiar? We do the same with tragedy sites today. Flowers, plaques, hashtags. What matters here is not whether Gregory IX funded a church on a certain island, but why people needed to believe he did. They wanted a monument that said innocence meant something, that a child could die and leave an altar, not only a ditch. Legends pay the dead in attention. The living take their cut in coin. Memory is not a museum. It is a marketplace. Once you grasp that, you can watch the next myth being minted in real time and recognize the mint's gleam. The last echo is the loudest. Echoes breed in the dark. 4 decades after 1212, shepherds in 1251 mobbed Paris in another burst of holy frenzy. Chroniclers stitched that riot to the earlier tale and called the two a family. Later, storytellers met the Pied Piper of Hamelin, a legend about children vanishing in 1284, and let the Children's Crusade haunt its corners. That is how myths move. They borrow, merge, and sharpen. Underneath, the same engine hums. A charismatic voice promises relief from humiliation. The poor look up and see a road with a miracle at the end. The elite are skeptical until they are afraid. Predators shop the crowd. Some kids find a way to live. Others get folded into explanations that make adults feel better. If you are tempted to sneer at medieval gullibility, scroll your feed. We have our own Pied Pipers, our own Tau crosses, our own sea-parting hashtags. The technology changes, not the ache. People want a story in which their suffering buys glory. That is why this tale endures, not because children conquered Jerusalem, but because the powerless believed they mattered and were used for it. The sea never opened. The human heart did, and the world walked across it. Now comes the part where we ask what any of this saves. From a distance, the Children's Crusade looks like a quaint painting. Banners, halos, innocence bathed in afternoon light. Up close, it smells like sweat and fear. We began with a promise that water would become a road. We met a shepherd boy carrying letters for a king who would not read them. We watched a Rhineland preacher lead crowds over mountains, not into glory, but into blistered feet and broken plans. We stood in Genoa while a harbor full of masts refused to cooperate with their prayers. We listened in Pisa for whispers of ships, then in Rome for a papal sentence that blessed their zeal and canceled their mission. We heard rumors of merchants with iron and pig for surnames, of ships smashed near Sardinia, of a church raised for drowned innocents, of markets in North Africa where hope had a price per head. Then we stripped the tale of its finish and looked at the bones that actually remain. The Leon Note, the Cologne Chronicle, the hard work of historians who untangled medieval rumor from medieval record. What did we find? Not a crusade, a pilgrimage, not a children's army, a surge of the powerless, not a parted sea, a coastline that taught a generation how steady salt water can be. In that gap between myth and document, the true horror sits. Because even if no tidy villain sold 1,000 boys in one afternoon, exploitation stalked them with more ordinary shoes. Predators do not need miracles. They need crowds. The geography of abuse is simple. Where hunger goes, lies follow. The clerks who charged to write a letter of safe conduct, the city officials who levied fees for sleeping indoors, the employers who paid in promises, the men who told stories so persuasive you forgot to count your bread. These are not the monsters of stained glass. They are the accountants of human hope. Why did the story grow teeth and wings in later centuries? Because Europe wanted meaning from its shame. It is easier to believe in a demonic plot than to admit ordinary neglect. It is easier to blame two convenient slavers than to face a landscape where every gatekeeper takes a toll. So the legend polished itself into a parable. The drowned became incorrupt and pilgrimage-worthy. The enslaved became martyrs. The boys became children, eternal, pure, perfect. Blessing is a drug. It lets us feel noble over other people's suffering. And yet the record will not bend. Read the near-contemporary witnesses, and you see no holy war, only a wave of pueri, young, poor, powerless, who tried to walk to the horizon because no one with horses would carry them. Their faith was real, their hunger was real, their use by others was real. The miracle failed, the machine did not. Here is your modern parallel, as promised. When you hear of a caravan walking to a border because an app told them jobs wait, do not laugh at medievals who believed the sea might split. Look at the brokers who sell seats on second-hand buses. Look at the search histories of the kids who go because home is already a slow death. Listen to the sermons. Today, they come in the language of opportunity and safety instead of salvation. The structure is identical. There is always a Stephen somewhere, eyes shining, promising that the road itself will reward you. There is always a Nicholas somewhere, saying that purity is a passport. There is always an innocent somewhere, reading a speech that praises your zeal and instructs you to vanish. And there are always Hughes and Williams with new names, new platforms, new contracts, doing math on your body. So what do we do with a legend like this? We do not sneer at it. We do not swallow it whole either. We hold it under light until the embroidery shows, so the real fabric, frayed, dirty, strong, can be seen. We name the poverty that precipitates pilgrimages. We name the charisma that can harness grief and turn it into spectacle. We name the institutions that prefer a good story to a hard policy. We name the marketplace that grows around bones, from rope-tied bundles to Tau crosses to painted ceilings. The world of 1212 is gone. The pattern is not. Every time despair organizes itself into a march, someone will sell tickets to the miracle, and someone else will count the bodies after. If you are grateful for anything modern, let it be this: privacy, choice, and the possibility to check a claim before you walk. The ancient shadows still linger in our feeds and our laws, but you do not have to follow the pipe. Which detail haunts you? The kneeling at the Genoa shore, the letters no king would read, the bones the water returned, or the quiet accounting ledgers that ate more lives than any storm? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe for more brutally honest history. Like this video if you are glad you were not born in the Dark Ages. And remember this: the next time a voice says, "Only faith is required," and the sea will do the rest. Waves are loyal to the moon, not to men, too.